Good afternoon, dear friends. This is Ruslan Belov. We continue to analyze the situation on the front lines in our daily format, and I've just received information that a US special envoy is on his way. His plane has already departed and is heading to Moscow for a meeting with Putin. Additionally, today Putin will meet with Lukashenko, and we might soon hear Putin's response to the proposal for a 30-day ceasefire. Meanwhile, we continue to examine the situation on the front lines. Let's open the map. Before we begin, I'd like to sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps the channel grow. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. So yesterday, Putin visited the command post of the Kursk group, and Gerasimov briefed him on the results of the offensive operation. The results over the past 5 days are truly impressive. We've only seen such momentum at the very beginning, in February-March 2022, and that's it. I'll even show this to you visually. Let's switch to March 7th, the day before the offensive operation began, and here's what we see. This is the territory controlled by the Ukrainian armed forces, or in other words, the line of contact, the day before active offensive actions began. In total, this entire area, 260 square kilometers, came under Russian control in 5 days. That's an average of about 50 square kilometers per day, maybe even a bit more. Even Ukrainian resources, which remained silent for a couple of days, as if nothing was happening, as if the Kursk front didn't exist, are now acknowledging the successes of the Russian army. For example, here's a map from the Ukrainian resource deep state. They don't acknowledge everything, of course, but they do recognize most of it. As a result, the Ukrainian armed forces now control only this small part of the Kursk region, less than 150 square kilometers. Yesterday, when Putin visited the command post, he tasked Gerasimov with clearing the entire Kursk region as quickly as possible. And attention, he also ordered the creation of a security zone along the border. This, of course, refers to the Sumi region and advancing further into it. But we'll come back to that later. Additionally, it was stated how to treat captured soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces taken in the Kursk region as terrorists, especially mercenaries. As for the advances, the city of Sudzha fell in 2 days. The pace is not just surprising, it's impressive. Almost all military experts, including myself, assumed that the Ukrainian armed forces would try to hold their ground here, set up fortifications and so on. But no, the Ukrainian armed forces fled, offering only sporadic resistance in some areas. Overall, it was a mass retreat to the Sumi region, although Kursk is still trying to convince everyone that everything is under control and that they are even holding Sudzha. Sure, they're holding it, especially considering the presence of Russian flags in the western part of Sudzha. Here, you can see the video from Soviet Square near the Sudzha administration that appeared yesterday morning. So, the clearing of the city continued all day yesterday, but by evening it was completed, and a new offensive phase began. Let's talk about that now. 2 large settlements. For context, Goncharovka has a population of 2,500, and Zaporizhzhia is even larger, with almost 2,700 residents. So these 2 villages, which are essentially connected, separated only by the Oleshnya River, have a combined population of 5,000, more than Sudzha itself. And now capturing these villages is the primary objective. The army is handling it. Yesterday evening, assault units entered Zaporizhzhia via Zalamova Street and took control of the Ilinskaya church. Here it is. The Ukrainian armed forces fled along the N07 highway. However, this time they didn't get away so easily. Their equipment was hit and burned. It's hard to say how many Ukrainian soldiers died during the retreat, but even Ukrainian sources, not propagandists, but quite reasonable ones, are saying there were many casualties. Judging by the footage of burned equipment, this seems plausible. At the same time, an attack was launched on Goncharovka. The advance was along Pobeda Street. According to reports from late evening, the entire Pobeda Street and the medical complex, here it is, were taken under control. Just like in Sudzha, the Ukrainian armed forces didn't put up much resistance here. There are pockets of resistance, as I mentioned earlier, but they are only trying to buy time for the main forces to retreat. By morning, almost all of Goncharovka and Zaporizhzhia had been liberated. This was also reported by Yuri Podolyak in his Telegram channel. In general, we expect a lot of footage today, both from Sudzha and these villages. But you know what else is extremely important? Yesterday, Russian troops made a breakthrough in the Sumi region. Footage of this advance has emerged, meaning it's not just a claim on Telegram, it's confirmed by video evidence. The video shows fighters moving in a column on quad bikes towards Basovka. The movement took place here, and the total advance was slightly over 2 kilometers. As you can see on the map, the positions are now parallel to the village. Ukrainian sources reported that about 20 fighters broke through into the village. I mean Basovka, and that fighting is ongoing there. In general, this is no longer about attempts to establish fire control over the route from the Kursk region. That fire control already exists. Now the focus is on creating a bridgehead for a further strike deeper into the Sumi region. The question arises, how far can Russian troops advance? At the moment, from positions near the village of Sverdlikovo, they have already advanced 5.5 kilometers inland. Let's take a look. I'll zoom out the map. Imagine that in a week, the entire Kursk front will be cleared. That's where things are heading, and the entire group, with all its mass, numbers and power, will descend on the Sumi region. It's important to note that although the Ukrainian armed forces managed to retreat, their losses over these days are still colossal. Again, as the Chief of the General Staff said yesterday, there are 420 prisoners just from the last few days, and the number of killed is likely in the thousands. In general, if the decision is made for the entire Kursk group to move further into the Sumi region, well, Yunakovka is definitely doomed. Sumi? We'll see. Now let's move to other directions, starting with the Zaporizhzhia direction. Here, a unit of the 247th Air Assault Regiment of the Russian Armed Forces, specifically the Rostov Battalion, has taken control of the village of Pyatikatki. This information is confirmed by footage released by the Russian side, showing the Russian flag being raised in the center of the battle-damaged village. Next, the South Donetsk direction. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that, as a result of active offensive actions, the village of Dnepro-Energia has come under the full control of the Vostok troop grouping. Meanwhile, according to reports from some sources, the Ukrainian armed forces, during several counterattacks, regained control of some positions between the villages of Privolnoye and Burlatskoye, as well as entered the eastern outskirts of the village of Novoselka, but without any ground confirmation. It is also reported that today Russian units have already entered the next village, Veseloye. We are waiting for video confirmation. Next, the Pokrovsk direction. On the right flank, there are adjustments to the map in favor of Ukrainian forces near the road junction on the H-32 highway, based on footage released by the Ukrainian side showing an attack on advanced Russian positions located on the territory of a livestock complex using a tank. Some interesting developments are coming from this direction. The Pokrovsk Arc on March 13th, fighting for the village of Shevchenko and other directions. Currently, the Ukrainian armed forces are not conducting active attacks in this area. It is unclear whether forces have been redeployed from here to strengthen the front in the Sumi region, which would be logical. But in the last 2 days, the initiative has shifted to the Russian armed forces, which are conducting attacks. The main efforts are focused on regaining positions lost during the enemy's February-March counteroffensive. Russian armed forces units are fighting to regain control in the areas of Udaknoye, Peshanoye, Shevchenko and Zelenoye. Tactical successes are being observed, but full restoration of positions is still far off. For example, the current control map of Shevchenko looks like this. Next, the Chasiv Yar direction. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that, as a result of decisive actions, the village of Novomarkovo has come under the full control of the southern troop grouping. The village is located on the western bank of the Seversky Donets-Donbass Canal, 9 kilometers north of Chasiv Yar. According to sources familiar with the situation, Russian volunteer units defeated Ukrainian armed forces units yesterday and then cleared the entire territory of the village. Next, the Seversk direction. Here, Russian troops continue to expand the control zone north of the village of Verkhnokamenskoye. The advance of Russian assault groups up to 1 kilometer to the northwest from the village of Zolotarevka has been recorded. This information is confirmed by footage of objective control showing the movement of Russian armored vehicles under artillery and FPV drone strikes by the enemy, followed by the landing of troops in forest belts. On the Krasny-Liman sector, there are adjustments to the map in favor of Russian forces west of the village of Ivanovka, where another Ukrainian armed forces stronghold has come under Russian control. This information is confirmed by footage released by the Ukrainian side showing an attack on advanced Russian positions using FPV drones. At the same time, on the Borovsky sector of the front, Russian units, during a successful attack, regained control of the village of Zaporizhzhia and, advancing further, entered the northern outskirts of the neighboring village of Boguslavka. The total advance of Russian forces was over 3 kilometers. This information is confirmed by footage released by the Ukrainian side showing an attack on advanced Russian positions using FPV drones. On the Kharkiv and Toretsk directions, there are no visible changes. Well, that's all for today on the situation at the front. I'll say goodbye to you for now, wishing you a good workday.